Have you ever seen a dog ignore every command just to save lives? That's exactly what happened when Officer Sarah Caldwell, a 44-year-old K-9 handler at Chicago O'Hare Airport, noticed her Belgian Malinois named Axel acting strangely during a routine patrol. It was 6 a.m., terminal lights still flickering awake, and the crowd was filled with red-eye passengers sleepwalking through customs. But Axel, he wasn't following protocol. He broke heel formation, locked in on a luxury suitcase, and refused to back down. Even when Sarah was ordered to let it go, Axel stood his ground, growling low, teeth bared. What he sensed inside that diplomatic case stunned everyone, but more shocking was who tried to stop them from opening it. What would you do if your partner defied every order, but was absolutely right? Before we reveal what Axel uncovered and the web of lies it exposed, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if stories about loyalty, instinct, and justice spark your interest, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next unbelievable K-9 mission. And just when Sarah thought things couldn't get more complicated, Axel growled again, this time deeper, more primal. The kind of sound that didn't come from training, but from something ancient in a dog's bones. Danger. The suitcase's owner stepped forward. A tall man in his late 50s, olive skin, salt and pepper hair, wearing a sleek gray overcoat and expensive Italian shoes. He carried himself like someone used to private jets and closed-door meetings. In one hand, a diplomatic passport. In the other, a phone, open to a text message in Arabic. Sarah's instincts screamed louder than protocol. "Sir, please step aside with your luggage," she said, firm but professional. The man smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. This is a diplomatic pouch, protected under international law. He gestured toward the gold seal on the suitcase. "I have rights, officer." Axel, meanwhile, didn't care about gold seals. His nose was pressed to the leather, body taut like a bowstring. Sarah's supervisor called over her radio, urging her to disengage, but she didn't move. She looked at Axel, and Axel looked back. That was all she needed. Because sometimes you don't need evidence, you need conviction. Then, it happened. Axel lunged without warning, teeth sinking into the leather. The man shouted. Bystanders screamed. Phones came out. And just like that, a normal morning at O'Hare turned into a political nightmare, and the beginning of a case that would unravel an underground empire few even knew existed. What would you do if your K-9 partner just bit into a diplomatic suitcase in front of dozens of cameras, and your boss told you to stand down? Sarah barely had time to react. The crowd around her grew louder. Gasps, whispers, phones raised in every direction. The man in the gray coat, once composed, was now shouting in accented English. "This is an international violation. That animal attacked me." But Sarah wasn't listening to him. She was staring at the suitcase. Axel's bite had torn through the thick crocodile leather. But what caught her eye wasn't the ripped exterior. It was what was beneath. The teeth marks hadn't gone deep. Not because Axel had pulled back, but because something hard was under the leather. Reinforced, shielded. She crouched beside it, fingers brushing across a metallic mesh barely visible through the tear, something no ordinary suitcase would ever need. Behind her, her supervisor hissed under his breath, "Sarah, back off." You know what this means. State Department's already breathing down our necks. But Sarah stood her ground. Then let them breathe harder. Because every instinct in her body, and more importantly in Axel's, was telling her this wasn't politics. This was predator instinct, and predators don't guess, they know. As the diplomatic agents arrived and the shouting intensified, Sarah looked around. The situation was about to explode. But she wasn't afraid, because for the first time that morning she wasn't alone in knowing the truth. Axel had known it all along. You'd think after biting into a diplomatic pouch, the situation couldn't escalate further, but that's where you'd be wrong. As airport security scrambled to contain the scene, a flurry of dark suits pushed through the crowd. Two men, sharp-jawed and overly confident, flashed diplomatic credentials as they demanded custody of both the man and the suitcase. Sarah's supervisor, caught between protocol and common sense, started to fold under the pressure. But Sarah noticed something no one else did: the look in the man's eyes. He wasn't angry anymore. He was calculating, waiting. She stepped in front of the suitcase, Axel beside her like a living shield. "He's stalling," she said quietly. "Whatever's in that case, they're trying to buy time until it disappears for good." Moments later, the X-ray scan confirmed her worst fear, or rather, didn't confirm anything at all. The suitcase came up black on the screen, completely unreadable. "It's shielded," the tech whispered. "Some kind of military-grade mesh. It's hiding whatever's inside." Sarah turned to her supervisor. "Still want me to walk away?" Silence. Tension. And then the words that changed everything. "Prepare for a full breach." The bomb squad moved in, gloves on, tools ready. Sarah stood back with Axel, her heart racing. Because if this was what she thought it was, they weren't just uncovering smuggled goods. They were about to crack open a war chest of wildlife crime. They were expecting maybe drugs, maybe weapons, but what they found instead left the entire room in stunned silence. As the bomb squad carefully sliced through the suitcase's shielded lining, layer by layer of custom engineering was revealed. Insulated foam, microclimate tubing, and tiny blinking sensors. This wasn't just smuggling, this was life support. Inside, nestled in shock-absorbing compartments, lay some of the rarest living creatures on Earth. A golden poison dart frog, motionless but breathing. A pair of vibrant blue parrots, later confirmed to be Spix's macaws, thought extinct in the wild. There were snakes, turtles, even sedated salamanders with spotted skin and glowing underbellies. Each specimen was housed in its own container with oxygen flow, temperature regulation, and even humidity sensors. It looked less like a suitcase and more like a portable laboratory, or a black market ark. A wildlife expert called in from the USDA turned pale as she whispered, "These animals are critically endangered. Some of them go for over $30,000 each on the black market." Then came the second shock. Hidden beneath the animal compartments, in a lead-lined compartment, were rows of forged documents, fake passports, export permits, and sealed vials of clear liquid. Hazmat moved in fast. "Don't touch that," one agent warned. "That's biotoxin, frog-based, weaponized." Sarah stood back, her heart pounding. What Axel had sensed, it wasn't just trafficking. This was a smuggling network backed by science, money, and military-level precision. And yet, it wasn't a machine or a scanner that caught it. It was a dog. A Belgian Malinois named Axel, who simply wouldn't let go. It should have ended there. A suitcase cracked open, a crime exposed. But instead, that's when the real danger began. While officials scrambled to document the contents and Hazmat secured the biotoxins, someone in the hallway shouted, "The suspect's on the move." Sarah spun toward the one-way glass. The man in the gray coat, the so-called diplomat, had just slipped out of the interrogation room's side door. No handcuffs, no guards, no protocol, just vanished. Within seconds, Sarah was moving, Axel at her side like a missile, through back corridors, down narrow hallways used by staff and cleaners, The chase was on. The suspect was fast, too fast for a man his age, trained fast. "Stop! Airport police!" she called out, her voice echoing off concrete walls. But the man didn't stop. He shoved carts, kicked open doors, and finally burst into a restricted maintenance zone near the tarmac. Then he made his mistake. He paused, just long enough for Axel to catch up. The Belgian Malinois didn't hesitate. He launched, all muscle and training, taking the man down in one clean strike, jaws locked on the suspect's gun hand. Sarah was on him in a heartbeat, wrestling one arm into cuffs as he thrashed and shouted in a language she didn't recognize. "You have no idea what you've interrupted," he spat. But Sarah did, because Axel had known it first. You'd think a dog couldn't change the world. But that day, Axel did. As officers dragged the suspect away in cuffs, bruised ego and all, Sarah stood motionless for a beat. Her hand rested on Axel's harness, the air around them humming with the fallout of everything they had just uncovered. Back in the terminal, a temporary wildlife care unit buzzed with activity. Vets and biologists worked in hushed urgency, tending to creatures that, without Axel, would have disappeared into private collections or been ground up for ancient superstitions. A tiny Spix's macaw blinked weakly under the soft hum of a heat lamp. One veterinarian choked up. "These birds don't even exist in the wild anymore," she whispered. This one might be the last." Sarah didn't speak. She didn't need to. Because that day, her partner, a dog, had done what machines, rules, and political red tape could not. He trusted his nose. She trusted him. And together they stopped something that was never supposed to be caught. Later, as they walked through the quiet terminal, people stepped aside. Whispers followed them. A little girl ran up and asked, wide-eyed, "Can I pet him?" Sarah smiled gently. "He's working, but you can tell him thank you." The girl knelt, looked into Axel's eyes and said, "Thank you for saving the animals." And Axel, ever the professional, wagged his tail just once. This story reminds us that intuition, trust, and moral courage are just as vital today as they've ever been. In a world full of rules and red tape, sometimes doing the right thing means listening to your instincts, even when others tell you not to. For older generations who've lived through uncertain times, this truth rings familiar. Honor and loyalty never go out of style. The bond between Officer Sarah and her dog Axel shows us that real strength often lies in quiet conviction, not in titles or power. In life, we may not always have all the facts, but when we trust what we know in our heart to be right, we often find the path we were meant to follow.